Hello and welcome to episode 108 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. My name is Sigmund Judge. I am of course joined by my co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee, and I think we've both had a bit of a crazy week.
What a week it's been, Sigmund. My head is spinning from all the news and everything that's been going on this week. I can only imagine how you're feeling after going on an 11-hour flight one way and then 11 hours back. How are you doing?
I'm doing, but honestly, so worth it. Of course, we'll be getting into all of that in a little while with our Apple Vision Pro first impressions. We will, of course, also be previewing this weekend's Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show a little bit later on in this episode. But we begin, I think, where we must begin for an Apple TV podcast, and that is with all of the Apple original news out of Monday's Apple TV Plus Television Critics Association Winter Press Tour presentation, which happened just on Monday. Lots and lots, Devon, to get into. Where do we start?
Well, it's hard to really know where to start. They talked about over a dozen Apple originals coming up, quite a lineup throughout the spring. It really is incredible. And they also put out a sizzle reel kind of overviewing everything that's coming. We'll be sure to link that in the show notes. It really got me excited for all of these announcements. Let's start with the completely made up adventures of Dick Turpin. That one's coming March 1st. We've heard about this one as it's coming together, of course, starring Noel Fielding. And we kind of knew what to expect, but we actually got a trailer for it this week as part of the TCA. What did you think of the vibes that they were giving off with the trailer?
This is exactly what I would expect from Noel Fielding, who not only stars but executive produces. Some interesting tidbits that you always get from these TCA announcements are that the stars do end up talking about the shows with the television critics in attendance. This isn't something that's live streamed, but it is something that we get to follow along on social media through the lucky ones that are in attendance. So apparently Noel Fielding showed up in like this orange pink furry jacket and pronounced that he never thought Americans would connect with his comedy. Of course, The Mighty Boosh, which came out in the early 2000s, saw more popularity stateside through its showings on Adult Swim. So you can never quite second guess the American audience's ability to connect with British comedy. His comedy is interesting, because I didn't necessarily connect with it myself, but what's happening in this show may be enough for me to kind of get into it. Now, with regard to the casting on this show, the executive producer Kenton Allen noted they wanted to make it a showcase of great up-and-coming British comedians, as well as giving audiences new ways of seeing famous faces like Downton Abbey's Hugh Bonneville as a comic baddie. And then you've got Connor Swindles of Sex Education and Barbie, who will also be part of the guest cast for this show. The trailer, as you say, is linked in the show notes. I think it's quite out there. I also think it's quite interesting that whilst Dick Turpin might be a bit of an unknown figure to American audiences, Fielding said that he's as famous as Robin Hood for the Brits. The real Dick Turpin was a particularly nasty piece of work, so he's had great fun in making this version of him a vegan, more interested in creativity than violence. And I think that really sums everything up about the trailer, about what we can expect from this show. Again, I haven't really got on with his type of comedy before, but I think there might be enough here to differentiate that from The Mighty Boosh. So, yeah, influences apparently range from Monty Python and Holy Grail to The Princess Bride. So, take that as you will, Devon.
I think it looks like a fun ride, and again, that one's coming on March 1st. A week later, on March 8th, we'll see the debut of The Reluctant Traveler Season 2. This is the second season of Eugene Levy's travel show, with this season focusing on Europe, but not necessarily the major cities that you'd expect. Instead, he's going to places off the beaten path that find him in all manner of escapades, including preparing for midsummer in Swedish tradition with a moose tracking adventure, visiting the land of his mother's childhood, Scotland, really excited to see that one, and learning medieval customs and harvesting grapes in Italy, along with a host of other great places in Europe. This is an interesting approach, how to follow up with the first season. That was such a unique show, and I wasn't sure how they'd carry on with it, but I like that they're going with a theme this year and taking him to some really interesting places. I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, and so Eugene was in attendance and said that he's loving the show for what it's actually doing for him. He said, the travel aspect of this is making me a more enlightened person and possibly a more interesting person, which I thought was really, really interesting because I feel like that just watching the show, let alone going on all of these adventures. Fun fact from Eugene during the panel, apparently oysters are still alive when you eat them. I don't know if you've eaten oysters before, Devon. Apparently that's a thing. The trailer, of course, for season 2 of The Reluctant Traveller can be found in the show notes. Now, a week later, we have something else, something that I know we're both super, super looking forward to, based on what we've seen so far. Tell me a little bit about Manhunt, because this is very different tonally compared to Dick Turpin and Eugene Levy.
Yeah, we're taking it back across the pond, getting into some American history. I think maybe getting a little bit more on the darker side of things. Because, of course, Manhunt is a conspiracy thriller about one of the best-known but least understood crimes in history, the astonishing story of the hunt for John Wilkes Booth in the aftermath of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Not necessarily a feel-good story, but definitely one that's captivated the minds of many people over the years, and one that'll be interesting to see on screen. Stars Tobias Menzies and Anthony Boyle. It's created by Monica Beletsky. Based on the trailer, this one looks really intense. Looks like it's going to go pretty deep on this story. Of course, growing up in American schools, I know the very basics of it, but I don't know all the ins and outs of how he was caught and all the different motivations and the people involved. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this story, and I think it's one that will hopefully resonate with a lot of people when it comes out on March 15th. Of course, there's a trailer for this one that we'll link in the show notes.
The costuming on this show looks absolutely incredible. Cannot wait. We're still in the United States, but taking it forward a little bit. This is a show I've already had so many lovely things to say about without getting into trouble. But it's coming up soon. It's Palm Royale, which sees its debut on March the 20th. It stars Kristen Wiig, Laura Dern, and Alison Janney. And it's a true underdog story that follows Maxine Simmons, played by Kristen Wiig, as she endeavours to break into Palm Beach high society. And as she attempts to cross that impenetrable line between the haves and the have-nots, the show asks the same question that still baffles us today, and that is, how much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice to get what someone else has? Which is an interesting line there in the synopsis. This is a show that I am so excited for. I think everyone's going to be really drawn to the performances here. Especially there's one from Ricky Martin, which I was not expecting at all. The trailer is out now. There were lots and lots of lovely things said at the Television Critics Association Winter Press Tour. And I cannot wait to say more very, very soon, Devon.
Well, just for full transparency, Sigmund has not told me anything about it either. And so I went into the trailer kind of blind, but I was amazed at the amount of Southern kind of snark that went into it. And I love that kind of humor, and it looks like it's just going to be hitting you right after another, which is definitely my kind of thing, where it just hits you with the laughs and you just keep going. So I'm looking forward to that. It looks like Maxine's willing to go pretty far to get what other people have. And so I'm interested to see what kind of twists and turns that takes her down. Definitely looking forward to Palm Royale on March 20th. Then March 29th, we'll see the debut of Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock Season 2. It's a series you and I both love, Sigmund, and I know we're both very excited to see more of it coming into the world.
Absolutely. Another show that we're excited of seeing more come into the world is LVIII, executive produced and starring Maya Rudolph. I actually watched season 1 of LVIII again on my flight home this past week. Really, really excited for this. Season 2 premieres on Wednesday, April 3rd, and during the presentation at the TCA Winter Press Tour, EP Alan Yang says that they wanted to go bigger, faster and funnier in season 2 when asked about the lessons taken from the first season. I believe Maya Rudolph was actually stuck in traffic due to the bad weather in LA and came in later on. So there was lots and lots to talk about here, including Joel Kim's character, which apparently adopts elements of his own life, being a transracial adoptee to white Midwestern parents, which he worked with the writers to seamlessly incorporate early on for his character. So we're going to see a lot more about him on what they're trying to do differently from other Eat the Rich shows. Alan Yang says, "We just want to be a hard comedy, but the show is also about how can any of this change. I think we're the only show where explicitly saying billionaires shouldn't exist." Initially in that first season, Maya Rudolph's character is so unlikable. But we quickly start to understand who's really behind the veneers, the fancy outfits and everything else. And she really breaks free from the environment that she was in. It's really, really a special show. So check out the first season before LVIII season 2 premieres on April the 3rd. Something completely different, Sugar. This is a show that we've been waiting for quite a while. It premieres April 5th, which is an insane week of premieres. What can you tell us about this one, Devon?
Well, this is a noir detective series from Mark Protasevich, Simon Kinberg, and Fernando Morales. It stars Colin Farrell as John Sugar, an American private investigator on the heels of the mysterious disappearance of Olivia Siegel, the beloved granddaughter of a legendary Hollywood producer. As Sugar tries to determine what happened to her, he will also unearth Siegel family secrets, some very recent and others long buried. This one looks really interesting. We've got a first look at it, not a full trailer, but I love the premise. I love that we're getting to learn a little bit more about this one, and we really don't have long to wait because it's going to be coming on April 5th. Then the next week on April 12th, we'll see the debut of Franklin, of course starring Michael Douglas and Noah Jupe. Tell us a little bit about this one, Sigmund.
Okay, well, Michael Douglas is Benjamin Franklin. Noah Jupe is Temple Franklin, his grandson. And this explores a thrilling story of the greatest gamble of Benjamin Franklin's career. So in December 1776, Franklin is world famous for his electoral experiments, but his passion and power are put to the test when, as the fate of American independence hangs in the balance, he embarks on a secret mission to France. At age 70, without any diplomatic training, Franklin convinced an absolute monarchy to underwrite America's experiment into democracy. This is quite the story. I mean, the overarching theme of this show seems to be beyond the biographical look at Franklin, which I think is really interesting. And Michael Douglas says that it gave him a new appreciation for our Constitution and our democracy, how fragile it was and how close it came to not coming together. Adding that he compared Ben Franklin to Elon Musk as bigger-than-life characters who are very bright but incredibly self-involved. Now, a fun fact, Michael Douglas never got into period costume before, so this is a first for him during his 60-year acting career. But he did play Ben Franklin once before, and that was in Ken Burns' documentary on the historic figure. So really looking forward to this. This kind of crept out of nowhere for me. There were a number of shows that I was expecting to be announced during this TCA presentation that weren't. This was not one of them. Really, really looking forward to Franklin on April 12th. Now, we do want to have a little bit of a break from fresh new originals and revisit some. And we have quite the lineup, a slew of additional seasons coming to some of our favourite shows, beginning on April 24th.
That's right. That's the return of the Big Door Prize for Season 2. We've heard a couple dates for this one, but now we finally have confirmation that it will be returning on April 24th. Season 2 follows the residents of Deerfield as the Morpho Machine readies them for the mysterious next stage, as everyone's potentials are exchanged for visions, new relationships form, and new questions are asked. I loved where this series left us in Season 1, really just hanging on the edge of our seats wanting to know more. I can't wait to see what the Morpho Machine has up its sleeve for this next season. Based just on the first look photos that we've seen from Apple, and we'll link those in the show notes, of course, things are really changing in Season 2. It's going to be a whole different world for the Big Door Prize.
Yeah, so excited for this one. But not as excited as I am, I'll have to be honest, as I am for the return of Acapulco for Season 3. I think this is probably the comedy that really stands out to me on Apple TV+, which is a controversial take because I know so many love Ted Lasso, as I do. But I think this is really the comedy that envelops everything about Apple TV Plus and what they're trying to do. This is, of course, bilingual, and it continues to be with the third season, where we see past mistakes reconciled alongside exciting new beginnings. In the present story, older Maximo finds himself returning to the Las Colinas he no longer recognizes, whilst in 1985, younger Maximo continues his climb up the ladder of success while potentially jeopardizing all the relationships he's worked so hard to build. This show gives me so much that I can relate to. My family used to go to Spain every summer. We almost don't want to revisit because we know so much is going to have changed. It sounds very much like Maximo is going through something similar. Of course, nothing really stays the same. And the same can be said for a new series called Dark Matter, which debuts on May the 8th.
This looks like a fun one. It's a sci-fi thriller starring Joel Edgerton, and it follows Jason Desson, a physicist, professor, and family man who one night while walking home on the streets of Chicago is abducted into an alternate version of his life. Wonder quickly turns to nightmare when he tries to return to his reality amid the mind-bending landscape of lives he could have lived. In this labyrinth of realities, he embarks on a harrowing journey to get back to his true family and save them from the most terrifying, unbeatable foe imaginable, himself. So we've got interdimensional, inter-universe battles with a different version of your own self. That's really compelling to me. I think it's natural for us to imagine what life could have been like if we'd have made one decision a little bit differently and how that could have reverberated throughout. It sounds like he's going to get to experience that, but maybe find out what the darkest version of himself might be and having to overcome that. So that's a really interesting premise. I'm looking forward to seeing more about this one. It comes out on May 8th, but we'll be looking out for a trailer as soon as possible for that one.
Definitely falls in line with the thrillers that we get to see release at the beginning of summer. And that's always partnered nicely with a nice family drama comedy. This time, the return once again of Trying, one of my favourite British comedies, and so happy to see this come back to Apple TV Plus. Of course, this is from BBC Studios, and we see Jason and Nikki, who after going through the adoption process are back in a 6-year time jump, where we see both handling their teenage daughter's desire to know her birth mother. So I'm really looking forward to checking this out. I have, as we've mentioned a number of times, family members that have gone through the same process as Jason and Nikki, and no doubt we'll have to go through this situation at some point as well. So it's really interesting to see this 6-year time jump. I think it's a really interesting and thought-provoking story that's going to be told. And no doubt there's going to be some laughs along the way as well.
Oh, for sure. The only thing that makes me sad about time jumps like this is, of course, recasting. having to find new actors to play these characters, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. I just will miss the previous actors that played the children. Maybe we'll get some flashbacks with them or something, but I am very interested to see how Jason and Nikki pick up 6 years later and are handling this new phase of their children's lives. Can't wait to see Trying when it returns on May 22nd. Then June 14th, we're back to the thrillers with Presumed Innocent. For this one from David E. Kelly and J.J. Abrams, starring Jake Gyllenhaal as Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rusty Savage. The series takes viewers on a gripping journey through a horrific murder that upends the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office when one of its own is suspected of the crime. The series explores obsession, sex, politics, and the power and limits of love as the accused fights to hold his family and marriage together. Now, that sounds like a wild ride, Sigmund. We got a first look at this one, Jake Gyllenhaal in the role. I'm excited to see him come to Apple TV+. He's a talent that we haven't seen yet, and I'm excited to see what he does with this role on June 14th.
Yeah, he's been attached to a couple of shows that haven't yet come to fruition. So I know there is some deep involvement with Apple TV Plus and Jake Gyllenhaal, who is one of my favourite actors. Interestingly, this is based off of the film Presumed Innocent with Harrison Ford. So I'm really interested to see what they do with the concept and how they expand upon it. Very, very cool. And then we got a little tease of something coming later this summer. And I'm really excited for this because, yet again, this is another bilingual Apple original series coming. Its name is Land of Women. It arrives this summer, and it stars Ava Longoria, Carmen Mora, and Victoria Bazua. Shot in both English and Spanish, and will be available to stream in either language, which I think's really, really interesting. This show follows a New York empty nester whose life is turned upside down when her husband implicates the family in financial improprieties, and she is forced to flee the city alongside her aging mother and college-aged daughter to escape the dangerous criminals to whom Gala's now vanished husband is indebted. The three women hide in the same charming wine town in northern Spain that Gala's mother fled 50 years ago, vowing never to return. Honestly, the first looks on this look incredible. I will say also, if you check out the sizzle reel that was released on Monday, you will see so many small first looks for shows beyond everything we've covered here, including Constellation, which, not too long until we can talk about that one. But yeah, just so much to look forward to, Devon. But how on earth does anyone remember all of those dates?
Well, thankfully, we offer an Apple TV release calendar for free, linked in the show notes, that you can subscribe to and keep up with all these days as they come. That's the only way I'm able to keep up with all of them, Sigmund, because there's so many Apple originals coming out, and I don't want to miss any of them. So I'm subscribed to it, and I highly recommend our viewers are as well.
And of course, once again, formatted for Siri, so you can just ask in the morning and Siri will tell you everything. So, a very exciting what's to come on Apple TV Plus. Of course, we'll be talking about this week's releases in a little while because, of course, this week was an incredible, I think, monumental week, really, for both of us. And I want to give a little bit of background. Last week's episode came off the back of a Tuesday night preview screening of Argylle in London with no buses or trains to get back from. We recorded the Argylle segment at about 11 p.m. on Tuesday night, and right after recording on Tuesday night, I edited right before and up until my flight ready for California to experience the Apple Vision Pro launch. But as we finished recording, you were beaming and you told me, Sigmund, I have some news that I didn't want to distract you with. And, you know, due to the beaming expression on your face, Devon, I immediately thought back to when you told me you were going to be a father for the first time. And so I was thinking, where are we going with this? But no. What did you tell me instead?
Well, instead, I told you that I had ordered an Apple Vision Pro for launch weekend pickup, which obviously I was very excited about. Last time we talked about it, I told listeners that I had not placed a pre-order, and really that just had to do with the timing of everything and making the right decision for, myself and my financial situation. And thankfully, in the meantime, between pre-orders and launch, I was able to place an order. There was a cancellation at the Apple Store closest to me, and I was able to get in there and pick up my Apple Vision Pro on Saturday.
Let's talk about this a second. How far away is your local Apple Store?
Well, as we've talked about before, I kind of live in the middle of nowhere. And so I live directly between two Apple stores, both of which are 2.5 hours away from me. So I can go 2.5 hours this way to the Apple Store, 2.5 hours that way. And so that's what I ended up doing. So it was a 5-hour round trip total. A bit of a day, but I went out and got it and came back and came home with my Apple Vision Pro and was very happy about it. But that's nothing compared to the trip that you took, Sigmund. That's actually short compared to what you went through with your 11-hour flight out to California. So how was that, and why did you decide to go in that direction?
Yeah, first, let me answer the second question, which is why California? For me, I wanted to be as close as I could to the people that actually made this product a reality. The people that are Apple. We often think of Apple as this big company, but very rarely do we actually think about the people. And so it was a really, really special moment to see the doors open at the store at Apple Visitor Park, and to see so many different engineers and different team leaders and everyone celebrating those doors opening, because finally the thing that they had to keep secret for so many years, that they were able to announce to the public last June at WWDC, is now available, at least in the United States for the time being, to everyone to try for themselves and to experience for themselves. And it was just a really, really special moment. It was a special trip altogether, to be honest with you. Had some incredible food whilst I was out there. The traditional In-N-Out burger that you have to have in California. Of course, mine's always a double-double. Also got to experience some incredible Persian food just before my flight back. So a big thank you to those that allowed me to do all of that and get addicted to Catan at the same time, which is a game I hadn't played before, but now I'm absolutely addicted to. So thank you to everyone involved there. And a big thank you also to all of the team at the Apple Visitor Center store just outside of Apple Park. I had quite the experience. So I actually had my Apple Vision Pro hardware being delivered to a friend I was staying with, but I wanted to experience the 25-minute experience that you get in certain stores. I think there was like 40 stores offering these experiences throughout the United States. Of course, a small number compared to, I think, the over 260 stores that are operational across the United States. I got this incredible walkthrough from Sophia, who I think it was the second demo that she had done, and she was as excited as I was. So having my glasses scanned first and having this demo and talking about really all of the excitement and the build up and just how simple the process was in terms of the setup, which we're going to get into in a moment, I felt that the experience I had in store is something that everyone needs to have in the lead up to taking an Apple Vision Pro home with them. From our conversations, that isn't necessarily the experience you had, even though it was an exciting experience.
Oh yeah, I was so excited heading into the Apple Store, and it really was a bustling place. I wasn't sure how many people would be showing up for an Apple Vision Pro in my area, but everyone was there wanting to see it and try it out and really get their hands on it. And so I ended up not doing the full demo. When I went to pick up, they actually asked me if I even wanted to do a fit check or if I just wanted to take my Vision Pro with me. And I told them I really wanted to do the fit check to make sure that the face scan in the store app had given me the light seal that I needed, because that's really important as far as the quality the video that you're seeing, and for comfort that you get that light seal right. And so I hung out in the store for a little bit waiting on someone to come available to help me with that. Checked out a couple of things. I always take my Apple Store appointments as opportunities to see the things I haven't seen in person, because I don't get to the Apple Store very often. So I saw the fine woven cases for the first time. I saw the studio display for the first time actually in person and was very impressed with it. By the time I had checked all that out, someone was ready to help me out. And so they didn't have the dedicated space for the Apple Vision Pro demos, but they sat me down at a table, brought out the demo on the serving plate, as I'm sure you've seen on social media, with all the fanfare and all that good stuff. Yeah, you need one to store it on, right? It really is the perfect way to display it. And I put it on, and immediately I started to have some discomfort, and I noticed that the video pass-through was not very clear. So I mentioned that to the employee, and they ended up going and grabbing another employee who had a little bit more experience with the light seals and with the training on Apple Vision Pro setup and all that. And that employee was able to swap out my light seal. I was supposed to be a 21W according to the face scan. I ended up going with a 23W, and that's what I took home. So I didn't get the full demo. I went through the setup experience far enough to get to the pass-through and actually see the home screen. And I actually ended up stopping there. So I didn't open any apps or experience anything like that in store. It really just left me itching to get home and get the thing back on and really experience the full thing. And so that 2.5 hour drive home, I got to tell you, it was a long drive. It wasn't an 11-hour flight, but it felt like it. I kept looking over at the box in the passenger seat and thinking, I cannot wait to get home and open this. And so yeah, my experience at the Apple Store was a little bit different. I didn't get to do the full demo, and I had to swap out the light seal, and I'm still a little iffy on the light seal that I ended up with, trying to figure out if that really is exactly what I need. So I'm actually in contact with Apple support right now about figuring out if I need to swap that out and what that process looks like when you don't live near an Apple Store. But of course, that really is just, it's a part of this whole process. This is a whole new thing that Apple's doing. We knew it was going to be more complicated than anything they've done before, because fitting something to someone's face is even more difficult than fitting it on their wrist. And we know how complicated the Apple Watch rollout was. So little bumps along the way there. I'm sure Apple are continuing to work to improve that process. And it sounds like for the vast majority of people, it really has been smooth. I'm still working through a couple little things there, and I'm confident that I'll get them worked out. But regardless, I did make it home with my Apple Vision Pro and was very, very excited to try it out.
Yeah, I had this kind of concern, right, going in, that the face scan wasn't going to be correct, because I got two different measurements, albeit one of them was for the corrective lenses and the other was without. And so it all worked out perfectly for me. I want to talk about the unboxing experience, because we haven't even got this listed on the notes, but I think I spent a good hour and a half just layer by layer opening the box up and just marveling at it and really just appreciating everything that has been done with this experience. When you lift the top box, it's just there waiting for you like a pair of trainers, and everything is so white and so clean and so futuristic, which I really think reflects on the experience that you have with this device.
Well, I will say that, one thing Apple has really been trying to do recently is get their packaging as small as possible to reduce waste. And I think a lot of people were surprised by the size of the Apple Vision Pro box. I heard it described as a shoe box. It's actually a little bit bigger than that, I would say. Maybe for a large pair of shoes. That experience of opening the box and it just being there fully assembled right on top, I think is an important part of the experience. And so I think that's part of the reason why it's shaped the way it is, but it really is like that, just that wow moment of, wow, it's just right there, ready to go, ready for you to put on. Also, the box just includes so many things, right? You've got your battery pack, you've got your charger and your charging cable, you've got the dual loop and an extra light seal cushion to give you a couple of options there. So there really is a lot in the box. In addition to it being very pretty, it's also very useful, because there's everything in there that you really need to get going and get started.
The manual?
Oh, yes.
I think it feels like a coffee table book, along the same lines as Apple's Designed by Apple books from a while back now. Yeah, the unboxing ceremony was exactly that. It was ceremonial. But the setup of this device, I thought, was as intuitive as you'd have hoped it would be. Now, of course, this device is only available at the moment to US Apple IDs when it comes to the store and the TV app. Although you can use a UK-based iCloud ID. So that's what I'm doing. That is an experience that I am used to when it comes to Apple TV and iPad and everything else. To be able to get hold of my purchases, I did rebuy a number of apps that I just needed to have, and some friendly developers also helped me for the next few months, whether that's test flights or with some codes. So very, very grateful for all of that. Now, what was your feeling the first time putting the Apple Vision Pro on? Because a big part of the Apple Vision Pro that people have been skeptical on or concerned on is comfort. If you're wearing something on your face, you want it to be comfortable. What was your initial take on the comfort levels?
So based on what I'd read and heard online, I had a feeling that I might need to use the dual loop band, but I did try the solo band in store. That's what they're doing with the demos. So I did put it on, and I felt some discomfort there as far as the weight distribution on my face. I felt like it was a little bit bottom heavy, resting on my cheeks and my nose, and I couldn't get the pressure up on my forehead the way I wanted it. And so I could tell just based on that experience that when I got home, I wanted to try the dual loop band. And so upon unboxing my Apple Vision Pro, before even setting it up, I immediately swapped out the band, put the dual loop on there, and tried that on. And I found that instantly to be much more comfortable for me. Now, I'm thankful they include both because some people do find the solo band to be more comfortable. But personally, I like the ability to customize the fit exactly with the dual loop band, get that weight distribution exactly the way I want it. And I found it, since I've swapped that out, to be comfortable for long periods of time. I haven't seen comfort being an issue since then. And so I really recommend, if you're concerned about comfort, try that dual loop band with its increased ability to be adjusted, and I think you're going to be just fine. Is the dual loop what you're using as well?
It is what I'm using now, but I wanted for the first few days to just use the solo band and see how it is, because it is so ingenuitive in its design. Mm-hmm. You have this circular dial that you twist and everything tightens up at the back, and it looks beautiful, right? However, what I found was, again, I was getting the pressure on my cheeks, and I kept wanting to tighten it because I was worried that it was going to fall. But that also made things a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm someone that, I for a first generation product, I'll go through anything. I remember the first AirPods, before the AirPods Pro came out with the silicone tips that would stay in my ears. I used to have to run for the bus whilst I held both AirPods in my ears, right? So I'm used to going through it all. And so I was happy with the solo band. But what I found was when I took it off, the pressure on my face and everything, it felt like a release. And also I had a nice big red ring over me for a little while. And I just didn't think it was genuinely doing anything good for me on a personal level. So just before my flight, I switched out for the dual loop. I fitted it once, and now I can just take the Apple Vision Pro off without having to adjust the straps or anything and slide it back on my head when I'm ready. And that has made things a lot more appreciative in terms of the amount of time that I can spend with Apple Vision Pro. Yesterday, I spent 11 hours with it, not including the flight as well. I like it. I think the one thing I wish is that there was the combination of the solo loop and the dual loop. So a solo loop with a band that supported the top of your head, which is what was used during WWDC and then some select labs. I think Apple just shipped 2 different products for simplicity's sake and usability, but I do hope that eventually we see that band make a re-emergence on the Apple Store at some point. Now, once it's on, what were the reactions from your loved ones? Do they think it looks cool? Do they think it looks way too futuristic? Because for me, one of the design elements that I really like about this is that it looks almost like a ski mask, and so not too dissimilar from what people may have seen before, even though it probably looks a little bit strange wearing a ski mask, either in public or at home when you're not going skiing.
I guess it depends on who you ask. I haven't been super confident to wear it in front of a ton of people just yet. I haven't been showing it off necessarily. I personally think it looks awesome. I think it looks like the future, and I get very Apple Watch vibes from it, maybe because of the dial, maybe because of the curved aluminum. I don't know, but I think it looks incredible, and it really does feel like we just went fast forward 10 years and pulled something out and brought it back here. Other people have had different reactions to it. Some think it looks awesome. Some don't know what it is. If you're not aware of what the Apple Vision Pro is and you just see somebody wearing it, it does look a little bit just off, just because it's a form factor that we're not quite used to yet, seeing people wear. I had someone at my office yesterday who was doing some work, a contractor, and they came into my office while I was working and had no idea, of course, what I was doing. And I'm just sitting there with this headset on and waving in the air, and they were a little taken aback, I think. They didn't say anything. I could see on their face they were surprised. But I will say one fan of it, surprisingly, and this really threw me off, is my son. I was not sure how he was going to react to seeing me wear it. I wasn't even sure if I wanted him to see me wearing it, just because I didn't want to upset him, obviously. And I think he might be a tech head, because he was super into it. He wanted to touch it. I guess they've done a great job of making it approachable. For someone like that to just receive it so well, that made me feel good that I can wear it around my family and they not be uncomfortable with it. So I thought that was great. I love the look of it personally, and I'm interested to see how people react to it, but so far it's been mostly positive. How about you?
I mean, I think it looks really, really cool. Right? I think it does look from the future. I don't think it looks too far forward from the reality that we live in right now. The interesting thing for me was, and we'll get a little bit more into this a little bit later, but whenever I had it on and people weren't aware of what it was, and trust me, if you're in Cupertino, everyone knows what it is, so it's, non-phasing. But on a flight, I felt the need to kind of say initially, hey, I'm going to be wearing this thing. It's going to seem like I can't see you. We can still interact and everything else. And even after saying that to one of the attendants on the flight, there were a few attendants that just ignored me because they thought I was in my own space and I couldn't interact, but I could see them the whole time. So I nearly missed out on dinner. I definitely missed out on coffee and tea. And I think it's just going to be one of those things that's going to take a little while for people to get used to. And that's one extra thing that I had to kind of mention to the attendants, and that was, hey, I'm here, I can see you, but you can also see me, you can see my eyes. And when they looked, they could see eyesight. But I think it's far more subtle than what was advertised. I think that's maybe to do with the lenticular design of the display, so that your eyes aren't kind of out the front, detached from your head. The lenticular display also makes things far more subtler than I thought. Now, I've only ever seen eyesight with me wearing it once, and that was yesterday when I looked into a mirror. But what are your views on eyesight? Because it's one of those things that will have significantly bumped up the price on the hardware, but I think is still really, really important to have.
I agree. I think it's important to have, I think you need some sort of way to communicate to people. Hey, I can see you. We can communicate. Just because I'm wearing this thing doesn't mean I'm cut off from the world. I think eyesight serves that purpose well. You don't want it to be too obvious. I mean, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, right? That's not the purpose. You're already doing enough of that by wearing these ski goggles around, right? So I think it is subtle, and it might take some time before the general awareness of what it is and what it means gets out there. But we've bumped into this before. I mean, when people first started wearing AirPods, you had no idea whether you were supposed to talk to them or not, right? And we've all kind of come to the conclusion that even though people are wearing AirPods, the assumption is you can still communicate with them, because otherwise we'd never talk to each other, right? Because we're always wearing them. And I think that'll happen with eyesight in time. It's just going to take a while. This is something that no other headset has included, and it's one that people just aren't used to yet. But I think it is important that it's there. If you're going to be working in this and living in this for 11 hours a day or so, you need a way to let other people know that you're still present. And so I'm glad that it's there. I think it serves its purpose well. It may not be as bright or quite as necessarily photorealistic as some people were hoping, and that's totally fair to want to have. It'd be great if it looks like you're just wearing clear goggles and there's no lack of clarity or fuzziness or anything like that. But I think for what its purpose really is, it does its job well. Now, we've just said that inside the headset, you can see the world around you. And there's been lots of talk about how much of the world around you can really see. Because that's an important aspect of this technology, is just how much of the world you can see through that pass-through. I would say personally, when I'm looking through it, when I first put it on, I noticed that my field of view is not as wide as it normally is. You lose a lot around the periphery, not only left and right, but also top and bottom. Once you actually get into the flow of using Apple Vision Pro, when you start working, you open up your apps and you're thinking things through or reading or playing a game or whatever it is, that field of view just kind of, you focus in on what you can see, and you don't really notice that there is some kind of vignetting around the edges. They handle it really well. It looks elegant. It doesn't look like anything's missing from your field of view. You just have to, when you're looking at the world around you, if there's something you want to see, you need to look directly at it. And might involve a little bit more of turning your head, but it's not distracting anyway, at least in my experience. Have you found it to be the same way?
I have. And I think one thing that Apple Vision Pro does really well to kind of negate this is, and I'm not too sure how many people have really talked about this, but if you look at a screen recording of an Apple Vision Pro session, you'll see that when the user is focusing in on a specific thing, it really like super focuses and super defines what they're looking at, whilst everything in their periphery kind of blurs, very much like our eyes, right? And that takes some incredible processing power to be able to accomplish. And so I think hand in hand, that all aligns pretty well for me. When it comes to using this kind of technology, the one thing I cannot stand, and I haven't been able to for many generations, I remember trying my first like virtual reality experience in the 80s, and it felt super claustrophobic. It felt like staring through a tunnel. There is a little bit of that effect on this, but as I say, everything else I feel like negates that, and therefore you don't feel trapped. You feel quite free. And another thing that's probably helping with that is the pass-through video, being in an environment that you already know and feel comfortable in. I think it does a really good job. Very quickly on the pass-through video, what did you think? Because it's not quite one-to-one with reality.
It's definitely not. The first thing I noticed was a bit of graininess and motion blur, which we've seen mentioned in several reviews, and that is very much there. I mean, it is a camera that's taking it in and putting it on a screen in front of your face. And again, I personally am still struggling with some of the clarity issues. I think it's more to do with my light seal and the fit there than anything. But I will say that in this field, in terms of other headsets that I've tried and their pass-through, this is definitely the most realistic. It's a step in the right direction. And it does feel like you're engaging with the world around you in a way that I've not experienced before with this technology. I've been comfortable walking around my home with it, doing very like minor chores, nothing, in depth. Obviously, if I'm folding laundry or something, I'm going to take it off because there's no need to have my Apple Vision Pro on while I'm doing something like that. But just going to fill up a glass of water or something like that, it's comfortable to wear, and I don't feel like there's any risk of me seeing something off, and bumping into something or not seeing something I need to see. I think it's realistic enough that it's fine to navigate the world in, so long as you're not, using heavy machinery or operating a vehicle or something like that. That is very much not something you should be doing with the Apple Vision Pro. But I'll say the pass-through, it's the best I've ever seen. I think it deserves to be lauded for that. And the fact that it just roots you in reality from the very start, I think really is. It's fundamental to what the device is. And the pass-through, it just has to be that good in order to keep you rooted.
I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I love about the pass-through as well is how well it tracks, obviously, your hands, and your eyes are being tracked as well. But your hands, if you're in certain environments, depending on the app, you'll actually see your hands being rendered with the shine of whatever environment you're in. And that, I think, is a really subtle cue that a lot of people haven't kind of noticed just yet. That really doesn't take you out of the immersion as well. And so I just love the fact that I could start watching a video and the world dims for me, but it's still there unless I want to get out of that world and into an environment. One thing with the pass-through, when you're in a darker environment, it gets fuzzier, and sometimes it cannot track your hands and everything else. So one thing that's on the shopping list for me is like a clip-on light that I can clip onto my t-shirt for when it's too dark a space. I had this on my flight home where it was too dark to be able to track, and so I turned on the reading light above me and everything was good from there on. So you don't need a lot of light, but you do need some light. In terms of the gestures, though, to get around, the simple tap of your thumb and forefinger, and it doesn't need to be outstretched, it can just be by your side for the most part. I thought it was incredible. I really did. It reminds me of the interaction with the iPad, pinch to zoom on the iPhone before that, and navigating with your eyes. I don't know if you've got used to it enough now, where you're just kind of subtly glancing, but I'm still having to I think this is just a me thing. I'm still having to glare at certain things just to make sure, but I think that's just part of the phasing in period.
It is a paradigm totally different from anything that we're used to, as far as basically whatever you're thinking about and focusing on is what the OS is focused on, right? It is incredibly intuitive to just look at something and it be selected. And of course, with Vision OS, it kind of either has some kind of, pop-up motion or the subtle fill or something like that to let you know, hey, you're focused on me right now. And then that combined with the hand gestures that are just so intuitive and simple that it's not going to wear you out or anything like that. Now, of course, the inclination is to reach out and touch what's in front of you. Of course, it's not there. There are certain elements when things are close enough to you, including the software keyboard, where you can kind of poke at it. But I was proud of myself that one of my goals going into try out the Apple Vision Pro for the first time was to fight that inclination and stick with the actual hand gestures and the way of navigating that way. And I was able to stick with it. One thing I've run into with the eye tracking is something I didn't realize that I do, but apparently it's something I do a lot, is I will look at something that I want to activate, click, or work on, and by the time the computer is done doing that thing, my eyes have already moved on to the next thing to start preparing for the next task. And with Vision OS, that doesn't work because it needs time to register your hand movement to select whatever it is that you're looking at. And so I've run into a couple situations where I look at the icon or the button, tap my fingers together, but by the time that motion is recognized, it's quick, but my eyes are quicker. and I've moved on to something else and accidentally clicked the wrong thing. And so I've had to actually train myself to slow down my eyes, which is probably good for them because that's a lot of eye movement to be looking all around the screen and all that good stuff. So train my eyes to kind of stop, focus, wait till you get the feedback that the selection has worked, and then you can move on to the next thing. That's been an interesting little just quirk of using Vision OS. It's a little bit different from, an iPad that has no idea what you're looking at, right? Now the hand motions, they make me feel like a superhero because with a subtle flick on my wrist, the entire world around me changes, right? Or with one turn of the dial, just everything is different. I love scrolling through web pages or note documents with the flicking movement. It works so well. It's beautiful and so smooth. I mean, if you're used to scrolling on an iPhone or iPad, it's just like that. Just instead of actually touching it, you're just kind of making the same motion. Zooming in on photos and things like that by pinching your hands together and apart. Man, it just feels so cool. The whole OS and the way that it works, it just feels like there's a connection between your mind, your attention, and what the computer is doing, that there's a layer of interaction that's removed, where it really just feels like it's reacting to your intentions. And it's incredible. And it's so easy and quick to pick up on. I felt like I was flying with it in no time. And I got so used to it, in fact, Sigmund, that I turned on my Apple TV after taking off the Apple Vision Pro to watch something. And I was looking at the icons on my Apple TV screen and they weren't reacting. And I was like, what is wrong with this TV? I had to pick up my remote, of course, to get it to do what I wanted it to do.
I was waiting for a bus earlier and I did the thumb and finger pinch rather than putting out my hand to get it to stop. Thankfully it did. But yeah, it's going to revolutionize, I think, the way that we interact with everything else. And just kind of stepping to my Mac and my studio display here and looking at the show notes and everything, it felt really alien already, which is strange to me for how many years I've been using Mac or iPad, and now it feels really different. One of the things that I love, and you saw it yesterday when I was putting the show notes together for the TCA Winter Press Tour, was just being able to put apps everywhere and kind of scale them to exactly how I wanted them to be and everything else. The Vision OS apps are fantastic. The iPad apps, though, what I love about the iPad apps are that they're a bit smaller. So something like X or Ivory, I'm able to kind of contextualize, okay, they're nice to have on the side there for me to check everything, but they're not the focal point of my setup. And I really, really loved that. And I really, really loved that. Now, we talked about the cameras for the video pass-through and everything else. Great. We also talked about the cameras with regard to eyesight, but we haven't really talked about the process to getting eyesight and what eyesight is part of. And that is, of course, personas, which I think is revolutionary in just how quickly these personas are made up. I think, 20, 30 seconds in front of an Apple Vision Pro. I'm not quite happy with my persona right now because I was jet lagged. My eyes were bloodshot and I didn't look too great. So I will be going back to that once I've recovered from this flight. But Devon, I saw your persona earlier because the original plan was for us to record as personas. That didn't come to fruition. What's the whole experience been like for you? Have you managed to jump on any FaceTime calls as your persona yet?
I've done a couple FaceTime calls and that's been fun. I haven't called anyone who wasn't expecting it, so that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When the next time I give my mom a call, if I'm wearing the Apple Vision Pro and I don't warn her ahead of time what she's going to think. I have been impressed with my persona personally. So as part of the setup process of the Apple Vision Pro, after you do the hand scanning and the eye calibration, looking at the circle of dots and pinching to make sure it's tracking your eyes right, the next thing it wants you to do is actually take the headset off and point it at yourself. A voice from the headset will direct you on different ways of holding it, looking up and down, making different faces, smiling and closing your eyes and things like that. It is a short process, and it's incredible how little information it really needs in order to make such an accurate representation of you. This is not some like template that they're using that you can kind of tweak, very slightly change the nose shape or something like that. This isn't Memoji. As fun as those are, and as fun as those can be even in FaceTime, and as much as you can make those look like you sometimes, this is a whole different level. And it's a lot less tweaking. It's really just, you just scan your face, and there's a couple little knobs that you can adjust if you think the lighting's not quite right, or if you think the skin tone may be a little too light or dark. But really, I took the headset off, I faced it at myself, I followed the directions, and within, as you said, about 30 seconds, I put it back on, and I was staring at this 3D representation of my face and shoulders, and I could make a face, and he would make a face. I could furrow my brow, and he would furrow his brow. He had my hair, even there were a couple little pieces of my hair that were kind of sticking out to the side, and it picked up that my collar wasn't quite centered, and so it's a little bit askew. I'm thankful that you can redo the personas, because that's something I imagine I'll want to tweak in the future. And if I get a haircut or whatever, that's something you can update pretty easily. But I found it fun, and I loved playing with it. Once I was done, just kind of making the persona mimic me and seeing this representation of myself. It really does. It looks like me, and that's pretty neat.
It does. I'll be sure to throw in a screenshot in the artwork this week. Something I love about personas also is that personalization when it comes to what you're wearing as well, because it scans your top half. So you're able to replicate the shirt or t-shirt or whatever you're wearing, which I love, because obviously fashion is such a big part of our identity as well. What I really am hopeful for is that eventually, because of course Personas is in beta at the moment, but eventually we have multiple persona appearances that we can use depending on our audience. So, for example, we can wear a suit if it's work-based. We can maybe dress up for Halloween, And another thing that I think is going to be especially important is the ability to be able to use your persona in a video conference meeting, maybe a late night one at 3 a.m., which is what tends to happen with me when I'm talking to people in America, especially on the West Coast. Maybe I can use it for that and still look great. So one thing we haven't been able to check just yet is how personas and SharePlay works. Something I meant to do, something we'll definitely talk about another time. Environments. Let's talk about environments, because one of the things, no matter what you're doing, whether you're working, maybe you're consuming entertainment, the environments that are on offer are incredible. You have a few that are like colourful overlays of your environment, and you have different sounds and things that happen there. But if you want to like fully immerse yourself, there are a number of environments that not only reflect upon your hands, which I think is really, really cool. So depending on the environment, your hands will be in a different light, but also the sounds. If you're having a conversation in the environment, it might echo. It's not going to sound like it's in a studio. And one night, not on purpose, but purely by accident, the first night I had this, I fell asleep in an environment, and it was fantastic.
Oh man, that sounds like bliss to wake up at Mount Hood at sunrise, Sigmund. I would love that. That's the environment I've been spending the most time in. And what I love is the way that they change based on time of day to kind of adapt to whatever time it is. And you can also manually adjust those. And so mine was in the day mode when I first tried it, and I switched it to night manually. And the night sky is absolutely incredible. You feel like you're looking up at the stars. It really is so immersive. And I feel like that's really the first immersive experience I had with the Apple Vision Pro, was trying out the environments, just completely transforming the place that you're in, feeling like you're in a different place, whether it's Mount Hood, whether it's the moon. It's incredible how powerful that effect is and how much it really does transport you. And I think how that can help us get things done on it and enjoy things in a different way, just to kind of context shift. And it's great to be able to be in your environment that you're in, but if you really want to focus or if you really want to relax, it's great to be able to change that up as well. And you can do it with the twist of a dial.
Yeah. One thing on the environment, so of course, we're going to get into entertainment in a moment and immersion. But there are different environments offered from different apps. Not all of them are the same. The Disney apps, for example, incredible. But they don't render your hands in those environments, so it does still feel quite virtual. The environment through HBO Max, which is Game of Thrones themed, is incredible. But the big screen in the Game of Thrones setting probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But the environment that I love the most, and I just wish that all of these environments were available to the OS as a whole, is the theatre environment in the TV app. I am blown away by this. Now, initially, I thought I would be choosing the seat and view that I would typically choose when going to the theatre, and that is bang in the middle. I think I count the seats in and the rows every time I book a ticket. This time, however, I think balcony front is my favourite position in the theatre. Having a home theatre myself, I wish I was able to just choose the theatre to get some work done as well. It really is quite special. And also the transition into that environment and back out of it is something that just is so slick. It's so Apple.
Yeah, it really is an incredible experience. I love that theater. I love the ability to change seats. I think I agree with you that the front of the balcony is probably the best one because it gets you more looking at the center of the screen rather than looking up at it. But I can definitely imagine times where if I just want to be completely in awe and enveloped by something, I might choose the floor front and really just make myself feel small, right? I love that environment. I agree with you. I wish it were available for more context. You can't bring apps and things like that into it. It's literally just for video playback. But for times when you want to sit down and be completely immersed in a film and experience it in the best way possible, it's there and it really is a great experience.
I mean, the reflections on the different environments like Mount Hood and the white sand as well are incredible. And incredibly, before we talk about 2D and 3D, we've got to talk about immersive video. This new video format from Apple. There are a number of Apple originals that have adopted this. Basically, what it is rather than having a big screen in front of you, you have... It's almost like these spherical dome video displays that you used to have, I think, when I was a kid. And you had to sit down because if you didn't sit down whilst doing it, you were going to fall over. It was that immersive. This is very much the same for me. And you are warned beforehand when getting into an immersive experience that you want to be sat down and be aware of your spatial surroundings. Wildlife, I think, is definitely the highlight for me. Seeing these animals come up so close to you, I think, is breathtaking. And adventure, which sees you follow a tightrope artist, literally doing tightrope barefoot across mountains. Mm-hmm. It is mind-boggling. I think the daring lady at the centre of this story that is just so well told is a little bit out there. She's one of the crazy ones for sure, which is never a bad thing. And I was just absolutely blown away by that one in particular. Now, the Alicia Keys demo that we get, which is much longer, I thought was a little bit awkward because she's literally singing at you at times. And the prehistoric planet I thought was incredibly well done, but everything is, of course, CG and 3D rendered because we don't have a time machine just yet. That's next on the list. What did you think of the debut of immersive video on Apple Vision Pro?
I was so impressed with these. I loved how easy they were to access in the TV app on Vision OS. They're right there at the top of the screen in that carousel, and you just tap one and hit play, and you're ready to go. I watched Adventure first, and I was so impressed with the field of view, the way you can look up and down and left and right and feel completely immersed in it. I have to say, the shots looking down the mountain where there's nothing underneath you and you can just see how high up you are, my stomach lurched. Like, it felt like I was there. It really got me. And the thing that I actually love the most about it from a creative standpoint is that there's so many new types of shots and angles that you can go for with this format. There are shots within that episode that are purposefully off center where you're forced to turn your head to see the action. Or maybe it starts on one side of you and then ends on the other side of you. And there's just so much to take in. It's amazing. Adventure, I love so much. The Prehistoric Planet one, at first my brain rejected it. Like, I could tell, like, okay, this is CG. Obviously these things are not real because they don't exist now. But when the little Tyrannosaurus Rex gets up in your face, gets up so close to you, I jump back. I really did. It was so cool. I felt like I could reach out and pet the thing. And that's like two leaps, right? Because you're looking at something on a video screen, but you're also looking at something that's impossible. Like, it can't be real, but it convinced me. I love this. These were such great ways to debut the format, and I'm so excited to see what creators do with it, because I feel like this format for storytelling is so engaging, and there's so much you can do here that these just scratch the surface, and they're so worth checking out. But I'm really excited for the future of this format.
Yeah, I thought my first experience of immersive video in terms of full length was mind-boggling to me. I can't wait to see what they do with immersive video going forward. What I'm hoping is that we're going to see more when it comes to MLB Friday Night Baseball. Mm-hmm. We know that some of the demos that were shown during WWDC were actually filmed at actual games and weren't, pre-rendered examples. And of course, the MLS season is about to kick off again. One issue, though, that has pulled me out of being fully immersed in immersive video is when you're looking around, and this is across the OS, you get this small menu prompt, which is how you access your apps and control center and everything else. This is still enabled when you're in an immersive video. So with Adventure, for example, I was looking around, I was looking at the mountains and everything, and I just kept getting this menu pop up. Whereas the actual playback menu has a quick exit. And if you want a physical way of exiting, you can, of course, either take Apple Vision Pro off your head, or you can press the digital crown and it will take you straight back into the menu. So that is one thing that I hope is ironed out, because I think it needs to be. There's already a way, and I think that's day one jitter. And I think the immersion is something that you're just not going to see on a lower resolution screen. And these high resolution screens are phenomenal. I don't think I've experienced a film in this way before, let alone a TV show, especially at its highest resolution. The 2D viewing experience is insanely good. I think it's better than any TV that I've ever seen in my life. Better than any projection, which is sad for me because I have a projection set up. And, it just basically wipes away all of the compromises that you would otherwise have, right? The size of the screen. Well, my room isn't big enough. Well, I can make it as big as I want in whatever space, and it doesn't make sense until you've tried it, because it really does work. You can literally make any space as big as you want it to be. And it's just a really incredible experience to watch something direct from the TV app in 2D. We'll get into why I'm saying direct from the TV app in a moment, because what we've been really looking forward to this whole time has been a way of viewing 3D films. Of course, no one really makes 3D compatible TVs anymore. My laser projector from Epson doesn't do 3D. 3D really feels like a thing of the past. Yet, there are over, I think, 196 films were available in 3D at launch. The experience is insanely good. Of course, you get very little motion blur. You don't get that discoloration that you would when you wear 3D glasses at the theatre. And you don't get that eye strain and the tiredness that you get. When I went to see Avatar: The Way of Water in theatres, by the end of it, I felt like I'd had no sleep in about 2 days, because it really is quite a strain on the eyes. You don't have any of those issues here, and you can go as big and in front of you as you want, or you can push the screen away, make it smaller, which is something I've done with 3D in particular. Now, in the build up to all of this, and I will say my preference right now is 2D films, but in the build up to all of this, I had been creating quite the database for 3D films that were released either theatrically, digitally, on disc. Of course, the discs were only 1080p 3D. This is the first time I'm seeing 4K 3D, and that's incredible. And so I was going through my collection. I had, I think, about 150 films that were going to be 3D ready based on the press release. And so I was a little bit disappointed when opening the TV app, going to the 3D section, and just seeing probably about 60 titles out of what was available. And immediately I knew what had happened. So the 60 titles that were available were all titles that had originally been redeemed or purchased within iTunes or the TV app. And all of my Movies Anywhere compatible titles that were at the highest resolution and also compatible with 3D weren't showing up in library, but were showing up as playable in 3D on their individual listings in the TV app. So I thought, okay, well, that's maybe a day one bug. And so I chose to watch in 3D, and unfortunately, it just played back in 2D. This is something that I was a little bit worried about, but as we've talked about many a times, there is no upgrade path in the TV app, which means that Apple lose potential money there for someone that maybe imported a HD movie from Movies Anywhere, and now there's no way of being able to buy the 4K version, unlike competing stores. And so I initially thought, well, this is a Movies Anywhere issue. And I'm pretty sure that's what's happening here. I think that purchases made directly in iTunes or the TV app are being recognized for 3D, but Movies Anywhere imports aren't being. Good news is Apple told me that they are aware of the issue and that a fix is being worked on, and I was told that on Saturday. So you can only imagine software engineers working throughout the weekend and beyond to get this fixed in a timely manner, because entertainment is such a big part of this launch and the messaging from Apple with Apple Vision Pro. I did, however, get to check out 3D, and I think the best experience for 3D has been Disney Plus. Have you checked out 3D titles just yet?
Yeah, I've checked out a couple of them. I watched a little bit of Star Wars in the Disney Plus app, and that was awesome. And in the TV app in my library, I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And so I decided to watch that one in 3D. And I will say that was day one for me on Vision Pro, and I think I overdid it with that film, because there's already so much happening with the frame rates and all the different animation styles. Adding 3D in there, it was incredible, but it was a lot. So I'll say take it slow, take it easy. Maybe don't start with a film like that, but it was really cool. And the 3D, it's obviously the best 3D I've ever seen, and it's probably the only way I could see myself watching a 3D movie going forward, honestly, because you don't miss out on brightness or quality. The 3D is just, in addition to that, it's not a trade-off.
I think the 3D films and 3D downloads from the Disney Plus app are what justified the 1 terabyte version for me. I didn't actually ask, did you pick up 1 terabyte as well?
I picked up the base model 256 gigabyte version. It's the version I was planning to go for, and it was what was available at the store as well. You know, when you miss pre-order day, you kind of take what you can get.
Absolutely. I mean, so one of the things I would say is that the 3D titles, the downloads are quite hefty. And probably the heftiest of them all was Avatar: The Way of Water in 3D from Disney Plus, who, if you remember from their press release, they remastered everything to be Dolby Vision compliant and everything else. So the 3D version of Avatar: The Way of Water clocks in at 24.1 gigabytes, wow. Which is pretty hefty. Of course, that's also covering some scenes that are 48 frames per second, so that makes a lot of sense. For comparison, the 2D version through the Apple TV app clocks in at just under 6 gigabytes. And that's what I wanted to get into here. There are a few third-party Vision OS streaming apps that are available right now. They include Disney Plus and Max. I think Crunchyroll's in there as well. But Disney Plus and Max are the ones that I've had the most time with. Disney Plus, again, they're doing it right. They've got the Dolby Masters. They've switched their codec. It's really, really high quality stuff. I would say on par, maybe even eclipsing the TV app right now. In comparison, Max, I think they've done a lot of good things here, and obviously they're very excited for the launch. They've got a lot in the pipeline, it seems. But the content that they have available is downloading at significantly smaller sizes, and that really shows on Vision OS. So for comparison, I downloaded Dune because I was really looking forward to checking this out in 3D. It's not offered in 3D in the Max app right now, and because my Dune purchase came through from Movies Anywhere, I'm currently locked out of 3D in the TV app, which is a real big bummer. But what I did was I downloaded Dune in 2D from my purchase in the TV app and from what's available in Max. There's just a little over half a gig more for the download in the TV app, and you really can tell. So I'd love to see Max kind of up their game when it comes to that. It's not unwatchable by any means, but the better quality being served is from the TV app rather than from Warner Discovery themselves. Third-party streaming apps that are compatible for iPad is something completely different, and we need to get into this because I am really, really hopeful that a lot of these services really up their game and maybe even give an option of an iPad app or a Vision OS app. I'm not too sure if that is something that Apple want developers to do, but I'd like to see that happen. Because right now, I love the idea that I can resize the iPad app quite easily and put it in a corner somewhere whilst I'm doing my other work or whatnot. But the quality of what's being delivered video-wise really makes it a choice whether or not you really want to watch it in Vision OS. I downloaded a bunch from Paramount Plus, from Prime Video. It wasn't up to par. I thought it was going to ruin the experience of those shows and films that I pre-downloaded for my flight. I was trying to watch Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Prime Video, a show that I'm still looking forward to checking out. But one of the issues is because of your focus with your eyes, sometimes if you've got the playback controls within the video itself, even with those playback controls not showing, where they would be, you get like these white highlights. So I was staring into the center of the picture, just trying to take it in, and I had this white semi-transparent square bang in the middle of the view. So whilst there are a number of apps here that are compatible with Vision OS coming over from iPad, they haven't been looked at by the developers and from big companies like Prime Video. that have the resources. So I'm hoping that that will be something that will be fixed by the time we talk on our next episode.
And I will say there actually is quite a bit that developers can do on the iPad end to make their apps work better with Vision OS when it comes to cursor support and hover support with cursors. There's an app that I use called Structured. It's my day planner, and they're not available as a Vision OS app, but they made an update to the iPad app last weekend to make it more compatible with Vision OS. And some of the things that the developers are doing with hovering when it comes to cursor support on iPad OS actually really translates well to Vision OS. And so they don't necessarily have to make a whole new Vision OS app. I know that there are still some companies that are on the fence about going that far, but there are optimizations that they can do within the iPad app itself to make it work better on Vision OS as well. So it's kind of a win-win. I hope to see that as well. Talking about Vision OS apps, are there any third-party apps that you've been using on your Apple Vision Pro that you've really enjoyed so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think apps on Vision OS fall into two categories, right? So you've got the immersive apps, and then you've got the apps that are using multiple screens and kind of more traditional in that sense. So NBA, I think, is incredible. It's an incredible experience, having multiple screens up with different stats, and there's so much that is in the pipeline from that team. I know because they're very excited about it and very vocal over on social media. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got coming. So I think it's one that everyone should have installed. Really is impressive. We're not quite there yet in terms of courtside tickets. I think that will come with immersive video. But beyond that, I think one of the things that I just love about this is the multiple window support, which means that apps that I do use can now sit alongside other apps, especially if I'm kind of floating in between environments for my playback and then I want to come out and maybe check something off. For example, with Roman SQL, which got an update also with Mac support, so congratulations to him, is something that I feel like I can use more now because it's not so disconnected from the experience that I am tracking, if that makes sense. And actually, it's become a really good tool beyond the up next queue for what I want to watch next. It's incredible. Of course, there's no YouTube app right now, but Juno, which is like $4.99, is incredible. I love it because it feels like the YouTube app if you don't want anything overly complex and you just want to browse. But for all of those RSS feeds, of course, we are going to plug Marcus Tanaka's Play once again. How has that been for you in Vision OS?
I'm loving Play on Vision OS. It's very familiar to Play on iPad OS, but it fits in so well with the ecosystem and it looks great. And what I've actually been using to watch YouTube is within Play, there's an option to just play the video in its own window without having to open Safari or anything like that. And it just opens a window perfectly sized for the video where you can play it, you can move it around, and then of course it marks it as watched in Play. So that's another option for YouTube on Vision OS. And I've really been enjoying Play on my Apple Vision Pro. A couple other apps I'm loving. Everlog, my journaling app, it's Vision OS native, and it's the best way I found to write anything on Vision OS right now. And so I'm actually doing all my writing there, not just journaling, but other writing as well. And then Widgetsmith, of course, was one that I had to try out. And it's interesting what Widgetsmith is doing is allowing you to spawn the different widgets that you make as individual windows, because there's no support for widgets themselves in Vision OS. But what you can do is you can make a clock in Widgetsmith, put it up on your wall, put the weather up, things like that. And it's been very cool to just kind of decorate my environment with that. That's been really cool.
All right, immersive highlights, because I think this is the next generation. I don't know if you've tried this out. Have you tried the IMAX app out yet?
Not yet. It's on my list.
Okay, so if you've ever been to an IMAX theatre, you'll know how kind of horizontal and sloped IMAX theatre is. I was sat on a bench whilst I was trying this out and I nearly fell over. It's incredible to think you can be in such a small space and basically have your own personal IMAX theatre. I kind of wish that in terms of environments that you could kind of fill these theatres up, maybe with like 100 Eddie Qs and different costumes, you know, laughing along or whatever else with you. IMAX is just incredible. I will leave it at that. If you have an Apple Vision Pro, please download that, check it out. It's astonishing. And then beyond movies, music, right? So Stage Plus basically allows you to kind of sit amongst classical musicians, which, if you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of scores, just having that opportunity. I've been once to see the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and it was something that I'll never ever forget. Now I get to kind of do this whenever I want to at a press of a button, which is mind-blowing, because I think spatial audio makes such a big difference. We haven't even touched upon it, but it makes such a big difference throughout the OS and throughout these different experiences. But the one that amazed me and absolutely blew my mind, Devon, is Amaze VR, which is a music app. And you get to see these different musical performances, right, from different pop artists. They're expensive experiences. I think they're like $16.99 for 20 minutes. But the one that I'm looking forward to that's coming soon is a band I actually worked with many, many moons ago. And that's Avenged Sevenfold, who will have a full concert in Amaze VR. One of the real fun things on this, there's a demo for a pop song, and it's, you know, your typical flashy surrounds, and of course the environment and the immersion is everywhere, and so you really get to feel the vibe. But then you look at your hands, and your hands are these purple crystals rather than your hands. And I just thought that was incredible. I cannot wait to see what they do with Avenged Sevenfold. I feel like I'm gonna have to download the T-Pain Experience to check that out, because I loved his album. I think it was the Free Rings from many, many moons ago. But yeah, it's an incredible app. They're the apps that I think are the future for Apple Vision Pro. And so I'm looking forward to seeing where things go in that direction. One thing I didn't check out, and I don't know what it was, maybe it was me just being super conscious of doing it in public, and that was checking out spatial Apple Arcade games on Apple Vision Pro. But you have. So tell me about those.
Oh, there are so many fun spatial games on Apple Vision Pro. I've tried out a few of them and really, really enjoy them. I can't wait to try out more. The one that I really love the most so far is Synth Riders, which is a new entry to Apple Arcade. It came alongside the release of Apple Vision Pro and Vision OS. And it's exactly what I was wanting in an immersive game. It's a rhythm-based game where your hands are these orbs and you have to hit the notes as they come by you. And of course, you have to reach up and down and do combos and different things. It's very, very fun. It's a nice little workout, too. It gets your heart racing. And so that one's been a lot of fun. That's been my favorite and the one I've spent the most with. You know, I'm a sucker for Jetpack Joyride 2. They've got an event going right now, so I've got to catch up on my achievements there. They did an immersive version. It's more like an environment that you play the game in. And so you go into this workshop, and there are these little doodads and gizmos that you can mess with around where you're standing. But when it comes time to actually play the game, it's up on a big virtual screen in front of you, and you play it just like you always do, where you have the control to make Barry go up and down. But elements of the game do come out of the screen at you in a 3D sense.
Oh, cool.
And so it is really fun. It's not a full-on immersive like you are Barry and you're flying up and down at these things. I think that might be too much, honestly. It might make me sick. So this is a great middle ground where you get that 3D feel and that immersive feel, but you're still playing the same Jetpack Joyride 2 that you're used to. And then, of course, you can play any Apple Arcade game on your Apple Vision Pro as well. I played Riptide Renegade Plus, which is not immersive. It was just played in a regular 2D screen, but I made it really, really big, and I hooked up my made-for-iPhone controller to my Apple Vision Pro, and that was really fun with the water effects and everything. Racing games, I think, are going to be a lot of fun on Apple Vision Pro as well, even just in a 2D space. So tons of games to check out. I've got a long list of all these different games and apps on Apple Vision Pro that I want to try. There's just so many really awesome and wild things happening The OS just removes so many limits, right, from what an app can do and what it can be. And so I'm going to continue to check these out. I know you are too, Sigmund. We'll report back in future episodes about more great finds of games and apps that we discover on Vision OS.
One game I'm really, really hoping eventually does come to Vision OS, Death Stranding. I pre-ordered it. It wasn't available, unfortunately, on Vision OS, or at least it isn't just yet. For any games like that, check out Bezel. It's an app that allows you to basically AirPlay over your iPhone screen into Vision OS, and that works great. So there's at least a way of being able to play Death Stranding in Vision OS. I think in terms of our initial impressions for Apple Vision Pro, we've been going over an hour. Overall, what are your thoughts on this new platform, this new, paradigm shift in computing, in entertainment? I am blown away by this. Every time I put it on, I'm smiling, I'm grinning, I am in awe. I think it's going to be a while until I'm just not amazed by this.
I completely agree with you. It is absolutely stunning. And it's an experience unlike anything else. It's hard to really describe, but it's so much fun to be in. And my biggest takeaway after using it for the first few days is that I want all my computing to be this way from now on. This is how I want to do my work. This is how I want to play games and watch films. I really think this is the future. And I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm loving it for what it is right now. It really is just such an incredible time to be able to enjoy this new era of spatial computing.
We still love you, Apple TV. We really do. And we love you, tvOS. It's just going to be a little while, I think, until we're pulled away from Apple Vision Pro. Of course, lots and lots this week to look forward to in the TV app across Apple Vision Pro, Apple TV, iPad, Mac, and everywhere else that is available. So what have we got coming this week on Apple TV, Devon?
One unexpected new arrival to Apple TV Plus this week is MLB's Carded, which is now available to Apple TV Plus subscribers. The 4-part series dives into baseball cards, the card industry itself, the stories behind the cards, and card collecting. So this was an MLB.TV original series a while back, and it's now available on Apple TV Plus as well. Today sees a new episode of Criminal Record, as well as the release of Apple Music Live SZA, recorded at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, so be sure to check that out. Friday sees a new episode of Masters of the Air, and on Sunday, Sigmund, it's the day we've been waiting for, the Apple Music Super Bowl 38 halftime show headlined by Usher. Now, I hear there's a football game going on as well, but that's not what we're talking about, Sigmund. We're talking about the halftime show, okay? And Apple is pulling out all the stops in the lead up to the Super Bowl halftime show. Of course, there's going to be the Super Bowl halftime show press conference Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, featuring an interview with Usher by Apple Music Radio's Nadeska Alexis. Within Apple Music, there's a My Road to Halftime playlist by Usher, kind of featuring highlights from his career leading up to this great moment for him. Jermaine Dupri is releasing an exclusive Usher mega mix in spatial audio on Apple Music. That'll be coming this week. There's an editorial on Apple Music called The Story of Usher in 20 Songs. And this Friday, of course, Usher's new album, Coming Home, is coming out. And you can listen to all of his discography in spatial audio on Apple Music. Tons and tons of Usher that you can listen to in preparation for the show. This week's all about Usher on Apple Music, Sigmund. They're also doing a 4-day Apple Music Radio takeover in preparation for the Super Bowl. And if you Shazam some of Usher's music this week, you'll be taken to a page where you can download exclusive wallpapers and watch faces. And just as a little secret, we'll put a link to that page in the show notes as well, so you can check them out that way. And as if that wasn't enough, Sigmund, if you're an Apple Fitness Plus subscriber, of course, there's an Artist Spotlight series featuring Usher's music, so you can work out with his music as you prepare for the halftime show as well.
Very cool. Who is actually playing? It's the 49ers
the
Taylor Swift's team, right?
Taylor Swift's team. Yeah, we'll go with that, Sigmund.
Of course, I'm going with the 49ers as much as a Swiftie convert as I have been. Mainly for two old dears that I saw in Target in their gold San Francisco 49ers bomber jackets matching. It was a spectacle on its own this week, alongside everything else. In terms of extras this week, we have the Masters of the Air podcast, which finally launched, and it's from the National World War II Museum, with new episodes releasing weekly on Fridays, and the first two are available now, featuring interviews with executive producer Tom Hanks and on-screen star Callum Turner. There's also a small inside look at The New Look, which is a show I cannot wait to talk about. In just over a week's time, we get to talk about that one. And that is everything, I think, alongside, of course, all of the podcasts and writing over at Mac Stories on a monumental and historic week for Apple and Apple Vision Pro. We can't leave you with just that, though, because, of course, each week we give our up next recommendations. I see the title. I know nothing about this. Is this to do with picking up your jaw from the floor after this week with Apple Vision Pro?
Well, it is on theme, Sigmund, and I did promise after last week's downer of an up next pick that I would pick something more uplifting. And what I've picked this week is The Floor. It's actually a new game show available on Fox here in the U.S. I watch it on Hulu each week. It's hosted by Rob Lowe. It's a trivia show where they have 80 contestants come out onto this big floor. It's a grid, and each contestant has one piece of the grid, and they challenge one another for territory on the floor. Each contestant has a category. They challenge each other in their various categories, and whoever wins that trivia competition gets the other person's territory. And so the goal is to eventually get the entire floor. It's the same contestants each week. You get to see the storyline playing out throughout the season. There's a couple contestants I'm really rooting for. There's one that I'm very worried about who I think took a little bit too much of the floor last week and made themselves a target. But it's a lot of fun. Of course, you play along, which is also a very enjoyable part of these trivia shows. And Rob Lowe is just a delight. He's always bringing the jokes and keeping it nice and easy and fresh. Even though there's quite a bit of money on the line, the prize is $250,000. Everyone's being very positive and upbeat about it. There's no drama or anything like that. It's all about just the trivia and having fun and seeing how much of the floor you can get. So that's my recommendation. I've been really into it. They're 4 episodes in, and like I said, it's not new contestants week to week. So if you want, you can go back and catch up on where we're at, or you can just jump in and catch up on this week's episode as well.
Very, very cool. My up next pick this week is a film that I've been waiting to watch for so long. It's finally available in the TV app today. I pre-ordered it early, so I will be watching this tonight. And that is American Fiction, starring Jeffrey Wright. It has a wild trailer, and it's about a frustrated novelist fed up with the establishment profiting from black entertainment that relies on tired and offensive tropes. So he uses a pen name to write his own outlandish black book, and is suddenly swept up in the madness he claims to disdain. The trailer of this is hilarious. I cannot wait to see how this film plays out. Apparently it goes to some very, very funny and cringe-worthy places. Jeffrey Wright is someone that doesn't get as much attention as he should. He looks incredible in this. But basically the idea of this is that after writing so many books that he wasn't getting attention for, he decided to write what is popular as a joke, and then it becomes a serious phenomenon, and so he has to play this version of a black man that he is not. Really looking forward to checking this out. Highly recommend checking out too this week. That is American Fiction.
Very cool. I love that recommendation. Jeffrey Wright is one of my favorite actors, and this really seems like the perfect role for him. So I'm excited to check this one out as well. It's a great recommendation, and of course it'll be linked in the show notes. That's all we have for you this week, Sigmund. If you enjoyed that, we'll hope you'll come back for more. We've got lots more to talk about with Apple TV, Apple Originals, tvOS, and now, of course, our Vision OS experiences. So be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review there. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, and you can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.